think it's Cristiana. And after meanwhile, I would like to present you Mrs. Mariana Uliță. She is the director of Montessori Institute in Bucharest. It is the only institution accredited in Romania to furnish Montessori courses for those teachers or adults who would like to approach this method in education and in education of the children also. She is also expert Montessori. She followed all the stages in Montessori formation, and she would like also to tell you her experience in working with children, especially because, as I have already mentioned at the beginning of this conference, Maria Montessori conceived all this methodology only for children, because she was working with children at the beginning of the century. She was working with children, and she considered all the time that children are naturally disposed to develop their natural skills, and adults only should direct them and not teach them. So Montessori methodology is eliminating stress through self-directed learning in a suitable environment, with a teacher as an observer and not a lecturer. So this is very important, because the center of the universe is the child and not the teacher. We are used with the center of the universe being the teacher, no? Okay, thank you. And now I will give the word to my colleague Cristiana Katsaru from Hellenic Culture Center from Greece. She would present you conclusions on piloting of the manual we try to apply in our courses. Yes.
Well, thank you, Carmen. Thank you also for the organization of all of this. And thank you all for being here. I am Cristiana from Hellenic Culture Center. We are a private school teaching Greek as a foreign language, and we also coordinate a lot of teacher training projects. So now, after this wonderful presentation from Laura and Roberta, with all the passion and enthusiasm for Montessori,
we need to have it. We need.
I can see in your eyes all the confusion and the puzzlement and the worry and the question that we also had when we got in contact with this theory. And moreover, all the stress we had because we should explain it and give it to other teachers. Finally, as you saw in Costa's presentation, 209 teachers taught in this direction their languages, because we taught many languages to around 400 students. Because if I tell you now, for example, how many of you actually teach a language to adults? Could you lift up your hands? Here around 10. If I would tell you, forget about giving books to your students. Prepare your material in a way that they learn by themselves. You are there, you're inspiring them, but you don't actually teach. And you don't really, you don't stress the fact that they can write, that they can take notes. You work more on the oral way of passing the knowledge. How many of you 10 that lift up your hands would say, okay, yeah, I'm Roberta, I'm another brave person there. As you saw with Laura and Roberta, the whole thing is a new attitude to life and to learning and teaching. It's another philosophy in a way. So you need to go deeper and try to understand why Maria Montessori, in that particular historical point, created this theory and this methodology, and how can that apply to us now. I think this was the point that Laura and Roberta helped us a lot, because they were the experts. We were all people that tried to understand how we can work with that. And finally, I can tell you that in spite of the fact that everybody in the beginning was very afraid of doing that, actually, the results were really amazing. They amazed us also, because after a point of fear and hesitation, and sometimes also a negative, like, no, I'm not going to do that, people that actually tried to do it found a lot of benefits, a lot of pluses that we shall see now together. So let us see some of the things, and then I will offer to you some conclusions that I understood from all the piloting. That was the thing. Just for you to understand that all our teachers were able to do what just now Laura and Roberta presented in a different scale. There were people that arrived up to a point. Let's say they used the activities that we have written down in the manual, so some practical things. Some went furthermore. They were more facilitators, they were more, let's say, free to experiment. So there was a differentiation of how involved each teacher was in this orientation. Because as Kostas told you earlier, we are not going to be, well, I don't know if we're going to be, but we are not in this project Montessori teachers. You need a lot of training and hard one to become a Montessorian. So we just try to do things in a Montessori orientation in order to feel better as teachers and to make also our learners feel better as learners, the learning process. So let's move a little. This is a photo of the training we had in Athens. With us was a very inspired woman that is working with the Montessori method in Greece today, Mrs. Professor Maria Zafrana and her associate Mariana Mavridou, who, whenever we had a question, except of Laura and Roberta, we could also ask her, as being a Montessori expert, if we were in the right direction or not. So the training played a very significant role of us removing our fears towards a new method. Yes? Okay, so what is important in this method, it's the whole part of reflection. Like, I think I am planning what to do, I am doing it, many things happen the way that were not predicted before, and then I reflect on that, I note it in a diary. Also teachers had their own diaries and we shared them afterwards, and also learners had their own diaries. So to see if one could help the other, sharing practices. And reflection and mentoring. Mentoring from the experts who would tell us, yes, you are in a good direction or not. Because we had, for example, big issues, like the silence exercise we did before. If you go into a class, like your classes, and you tell the students, now we shall have 1 minute of silence. You can imagine that some people could feel well with that, and some people could start laughing or saying, well, what is happening here? I'm paying money to do a course, why should I be silent? So in order to have the teachers understand why the Montessorians do it, that this can be a wonderful tool of concentration, of relaxation, and learners that we have, okay, some never liked it, but some said, okay, in the beginning I was a bit hesitant, but then I saw that moving away from my work, from my house, from the problems I had, and getting into a room where the first minute would be just empty, Or some people would elaborate the silence exercise and would put some music, some other stimulus. It was something that finally helped me. So although I was negative in the beginning, finally I appreciated it. So all this, let's say, analysis of the practices would be filtered through mentoring. And at the end we had the self-evaluation tools, peer feedback, one another, we were discussing our problems and our experiences, and of course the feedback we got from the learners. If some learner, for example, the people that would teach private lessons, this was very hard to apply this method on a one-to-one basis, because you cannot be easily a facilitator and go away and leave people do teamwork, because you have to interact with the person you are teaching. So there you play a double role. So in that case, the feedback was very important to understand the limits that the learner had and not impose something that the learner could not tolerate. Okay, I told you and Kostas told you about the statistics. The important for you to understand now is that we had 209 different approaches on that, so I cannot present you all the nice things that happened. We'll just present some of them that I think might be interesting for you. Yeah, go on. Now, these are the 12 Montessori principles that you shall also see analyzed in the manual, and with the help of Laura and Roberta we managed to let's say, understand more, and they were the let's say the pillars that helped people, teachers, to plan their lessons. These principles have to do about the environment. All teachers try to have a suitable environment, and this meant a lot preparing from beforehand lots of materials that students can use and learn by themselves. So books, diaries, cards, flashcards, audio material, tidy rooms, of course, because it helps also the psychology. And now about the teaching techniques. We tried to foster self-directed learning. Of course, doing a good needs analysis from before, so to understand how the learner would be helped to self-direct his learning. Self-control of mistakes in didactical material. We shall see some ways that our teachers used in order to help people having the keys, the solutions, and the answers of the questions and the exercises. Learning by doing. This was, I think, very important because many of our teachers had this stereotype of being a teacher with a book and doing what I do now with you, unfortunately, blah, 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 talking and you looking. If you involve people more in coming up, making couple work, pair work, touching things, using all the senses, like the smell, the touching, the hearing, this made people, let's say, you had on their bodies and their soul and their mind more written things than just sitting there and listening. So this was very interesting to see how each teacher would change his way of traditional teaching to that direction. Better learning through repetition. Whatever phenomenon they had to teach, they tried to do it so that with repetition the learner could understand. And choose one learning time. This is difficult. Of course, if you have a set of a course with a syllabus, with some preset hours that you teach, in the lessons that our teachers did, they tried in a way to see and help learners to decide the moment they wanted to learn something and how much they would learn from it. For example, if I work on the past participle of the past tense, the participles, and if I am tired, I need, let's say, only 15 minutes to work on 3 participles because I cannot anymore. The teacher would have the tools and the material to just let the learner do just this work because he or she was tired, etc., and to be able to give more work for more time to people that wanted to be involved more. Now I'm going to pass a bit quickly the other principles because we shall see them on the materials. Teacher's role, teacher as an observer. Laura and Roberto talked about that. The silence exercise, you had, let's say, an experience of that. This was something that during the piloting created a lot of noise, let's say. Everybody had, there was a lot of discussion about this. Good manners, of course. And the research for the didactical material, how to make all the material that I would use in my class. Movement analysis, to watch carefully how my learners react to the material they already have, so to adjust accordingly to that the material, to see from their movements, their reactions, their body, let's say, their body language. And sensitive learning periods that we also said we will rename in critical learning periods. If some person is, let's say, has some significant problem in his personal life, he doesn't learn the same way. So you have to respect that. You have to follow another rhythm. And except of these 12 principles that we had like pillars in our work, we also tried to filter everything through these 3 maxims. These 3 maxims are things that Maria Montessori listed in a book, and it has to do with inner, deeper realizations, like observing the reasonable activities of the child and try to really understand. Satisfy as much as possible the child's desire to act. Do not serve, educate the child to become autonomous. And since the children are more susceptible than we think, we must be very cautious from an ethical point of view about how we deal with them. So trying to adjust these to the adults, we said, and Professor Boylan, who did the seminar with us in Poland, helped us a lot to realize that when we work with adults in a Montessori way, we should really establish a relationship of honesty and truth with them. And we should really try to understand from the inside what people want, because maybe they come to the lesson, as somebody said here, for pleasure, or maybe to find some another person for social reasons, not really to learn the language, or to pass the exam, or to help the child at school. For example, I have many students, immigrants in Greece, that the mothers come to the school to learn Greek, so to help their children at school. You have very different motivations, and if you really try to understand deeply why that person is there, and you teach him or her, then you can adjust your teaching better. And the third maxim, to really help them become autonomous. If you go away and you're no longer the teacher, that they have the tools to go to advance in the learning. So let's see now some practical solutions that our teachers found in order to apply some of these principles and the 3 maxims. First of all, especially for the Greek language, because we have another alphabet than you, we had some help in making the letters from some wooden material or some sandpaper material, because the Montessorians feel that when you work with beginners of the language and you teach the alphabet, touching the letters and the direction that we write the letters is a very, very important thing. This is something we, for example, we never did in our school. We just taught in the classical way, the letters, etc. When they applied this, the learners, even if at the beginning they thought it was a bit childish, when they did that more, they found that it really helped them to write this new alphabet. So here, learning by doing, here in these little circles I have some of the principles that were served. Learning by doing, because you're touching things, having a suitable environment to help you learn a new alphabet, and do some self-directed learning, because you can choose yourself which letter you can work more. What were some principles that were served by this new material? Maybe you cannot see very clearly. In the manual you shall see that we have a special place of activities that are grammar based, and most of them have to do with the composition of grammar. So a lot of games, let's say, like puzzles or card match making, Like here that we have a declination of the present tense in Greek, and in Greek when I say I work, the I, the person, is not shown from the article, but it's shown from the ending. So here, this teacher found a way of working with a booklet and mobilizing, let's say, the learners to make the declination and learn it just by changing the main part of the verb and the ending. So a self-guided material of her, let's say, imagination of how to help somebody. This was also a grammar decomposition activity that lots of learners found good, and they presented good feedbacks. And it's based on the Montessori way of teaching the language, where the different parts of a syntax, like the verb, the noun, the adjective, they are presented with different shapes, like triangle, circle, rectangle, and different colors. This is all set. For us, we didn't have this kind of typology, so this girl found from herself. She chose to present with different colors the verbs, the nouns, etc., in order to help the learners of Greek to form the syntax of a phrase. And these learners would sit themselves or in groups and form phrases. Another grammar decomposition activity was to have these 3 different cards, the same text but different tenses, present, past, future, with verbs, let's say, into all these tenses, and people having already worked on a text would sit in groups and place the right verbs in the gaps. The solution, the keys, the answers to this activity would be found in the back side of the card. So in a way, the learner working alone would have immediately the solution from behind the card. This is a main point of the Montessori material, the self-correction, to be able to correct yourself. And of course, if there is something, a point that you don't understand, then you address to the teacher. This was an idea found by a teacher teaching A1 level for the numbers. She found that this circle is a way to teach mathematics, like the numbers, to very, very, very young children. So she told one of her learners, as he was trying to learn the numbers, to put on stickers the words he had already learned and stick it on the circle of mathematics of Montessori. Some matchmaking cards, for example, here you have vegetables and the names of vegetables, associating it, and then people would make phrases, questions to each another using this vocabulary, and then expanding it. You would have a dialogue in pairs or groups and a role play. And a peer assessment activity, so that each dialogue that would be presented, the other group would make some corrections if they would hear that there were some wrong parts. Some more of the same activity with role playing and dialogue based on cards. Here, just to tell you that this particular teacher was working with some people on a company, people that would work on a very demanding base and would have some courses of Greek after 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So these people were tired, and they had this profile of an executive, who really should have a normal, traditional class and not a lot of experimentation and alternative things going on. So her problem in the beginning was to really persuade them that, this is a game we shall do for 2 or 3 courses, because our piloting took place for 2 or 4 lessons. They experimented, and then if they wanted, they could go on with it. If not, they stopped. So bizarrely, strangely enough, these people, although in the beginning they were very cautious and very hesitant, When they saw that by playing, by being more autonomous, by not having this antagonistic feeling that they had already in their work, they had more fun, it was more relaxing, they embraced it at the end. Although in the beginning the teacher felt that no, this is not for that kind of target group. And this is the opposite target group. This was a class of a teacher working with immigrants, Albanian immigrants in Greece. They all also have, especially in Greece, let's say a stereotype of the fact that when I learn a language, I should do it in an academic way, a traditional way. So a teacher and me down with a book, because otherwise they don't treat me as a proper learner. So we would have to fight with this stereotype of migrants that they wanted a more academic, traditional style. So although Marinella, our teacher, faced this hesitation and, let's say, fear at the beginning, afterwards also when the learners saw that this approach would liberate them, would make them more free, they also gave us a very positive feedback. So, for example, from her testimonial we have this saying, immigrant with a high level of oral production but a low skill in written language, or even complete beginners in written language, can have a major help by the MMLT orientation in second language learning, because they relax and play, and they need this a lot, although in the beginning they are afraid of it. Now, these are some activities of the same kind of grammar decomposition done by the teacher of Collegium Balticum of the Polish piloting. From their piloting, we see that they had a constant experimentation on materials, as we saw also with the other teachers. We had new linguistic and cultural challenges, meaning that the cultural element was very important. Questions about the culture, or let's say to understanding points of the culture of the target language, and of course real life events which are fostered in this orientation. Some photos of the Supravita piloting in Hungary, activities that show that grammar can be taught from acts of communication, communicative approach, accept that the errors are inevitable and they help us learn. This is a major thing, I think, that MMLT gave us, that we are used to consider that errors is something bad. No, in Montessori philosophy, errors are good because they can show where you have the gap and you can work on it. And relaxed learners help them to know each other better using the target language. Some of the learners said that with these lessons, they finally understood the people next to them in the class, if they were married or not, if they had children or not. They came to know each other more through these activities, because before they were just people having a book and doing the lesson. So this was also very important from a social point of view. Some piloting, some photos from the piloting of Lingua-Più, the Italian partner, showing again the importance of the respect of the intelligence of the idiosyncrasy of the learner. So the many forms of intelligences, not only the classical intelligence but also the emotional one, the intrapersonal, the interpersonal. How let's say, to educate the learner and find ways to solve alone the problems, the self-autonomy, and how it is important that learning a language is an act of discovery and curiosity. If you don't have this, let's say, question on your mind to really want to discover this method, I think you should go into that. A case study we had from a teacher in Italy who said, MMLT helped me to get rid of my too academic way of teaching. I think this was a saying that many of our teachers had, that they, let's say, they dared to do something different, that until then they were afraid to do. They were saying, no, this is my style. I teach traditionally. I have students that are satisfied with that. Why should I change? Since we obliged them to change, because if they had to participate in our piloting, they had to do it, they finally discovered that some things are nice. It's nice to change a little bit my method, so to enrich also myself. About being an observer, we had a lot of discussion here because many people found it very difficult to go down, like if I was here and discuss about things here, if I would be making now some clear work or some group work. This movement is very, very hard for some teachers. They want to have the control. They feel that if they go away and they just observe us, they're not teachers anymore. So there was a lot of very interesting input on that, and all those of you who would be interested, I invite you to see the discussions and outputs on our reports to see the personal adventure that each teacher had to face in order to be able to pilot. Now I have some videos, but because I think I'm far ahead in time, I'll just show once a diary from a person saying exactly what I told you, that they were skeptical in the first place of using the method, being a big challenge for them, but finally discovering new things, new orientations. And online, a teacher that was trained online. And now let's see a video, the next, from a teacher who piloted in UK, from our English partner. But now we would have to exit. I hope we can see it.
Of teaching is all about focusing on the learner himself, his needs, and how they develop, how they can progress, what the struggles are, and it's all about trying to identify what is stopping them from learning and from progressing. What we try then to deliver is a lesson during which all the students are interacting and the teacher becomes the background of the classroom and is only used as a help and to gain some extra information. So as you can see today, all of our students took part in various different tasks involving group work, working in pairs, presentations, writing and reading, which was a perfect mix for visual learners, for those who are good at listening, and they practice their writing too. So we managed to cover all of these areas during one lesson without even making it look like a lesson.
To give you a glimpse of the atmosphere of this kind of lessons, and if we could go back to my last the PDF. Yeah. So just as a stimulus for a discussion, maybe this was inspired by the teaching we had from Professor Zafrana and also Professor Boylan, the two, let's say, Montessori experts that were giving the advice to us. And the deep point of them was that nowadays, we, language teachers, we are obliged sometimes to become a kind of a teacher robot, executing, like teaching books that we are given, following curricula that nobody has asked us about, and having to work on a very, let's say, pressurized frame with people's minds and people's souls, in a way pressurizing ourselves and themselves also. So their way, let's say, the new perspective that we had from the Montessori experts, and with the help of Roberta and Laura, who work on that method for many years, was that no, we don't want a teacher robot, a mechanic teacher. We want a person who is free, like Professor Zafrana told us. You know, we don't really care of all these cards and methodologies. Okay, every teacher can create amazing material. The important thing is to have a personality and to show this personality to the learners. And if you do that with a lot of love, finally the learning will come. So we need more freedom, we need more creativity, we need more feelings. And I think this is the basic, let's say, cultural shock that our teachers faced during piloting, that they remembered why they wanted to become teachers in the first place. Some people told us that, now I remember that I wanted to be a teacher. I wanted to be a teacher because I wanted to help other people, to be together, to experience nice things, and not be all the time in a pressure. So let's hope that this orientation of a free teacher with passion, enthusiasm, knowledge and curiosity is the legacy that MMLT shall give to you. Hopefully to us it has given already to the partnership, and maybe that there will be a continuity. So thank you very much.
Thank you.